It was well over 30 years ago that I was invited after Sunday service to go to the house of a young couple named Dale and Julie for Sunday dinner. We had a very nice lunch together, and Dale was a dirt bike rider. He happened to have 2 dirt bikes because on occasion Julie would ride with him. And they had a nice area outside of their home, which was on the edge of the town, for riding those dirt bikes. So Dale said, "How would you like to go for a dirt bike ride?" Well, it was so tempting I couldn't resist. Now, Dale was very experienced on his dirt bike and on the trail on which he rode. I, on the other hand, always rode a street bike, had never been on a dirt bike before. But foolishly, I said, I can keep up with Dale. Until he went around a corner and down a steep bank. I did not go down that bank. As a matter of fact, I flew straight out into the air and landed on my back. I laid at the bottom of that hill until the paramedics came to get me. Try as I might, I could not get my feet under me. So they came with a board and slid me on it and drove me to Crouse Hospital in Syracuse, where I spent the night. You know, the amazing thing about that was not the accident so much, but I broke several ribs, and I cracked several of the flanges that attach the ribs to the spinal column. But they don't do anything to cure you anymore. It's basically left up to your body to take care of this in its own good time. And so the doctor sent me home the next day and said, just be careful. Well, that's often better said than done, because if you know anything about broken ribs, every time you move, you get a little stab of pain to remind you that you have, in fact, an injury. So for several weeks, I simply did what I had to do, but was very careful with it. The amazing thing about that, friends, is the body wants to heal itself. Have you ever thought about that? We human beings are created for health and wholeness. We aren't created for disease and pain and struggle and suffering. But we do live in an environment and in circumstances in life where we often develop infirmities that do cause us pain. But basically, God created us in such a way that we strive for wellness and we strive for wholeness. And our bodies are made that way. And so, over a period of time, the ribs healed, the flanges healed, and I give God thanks that I have never had a back problem. I honestly don't understand it, because I should have been suffering from the results of that dirt bike accident. But you know what else? I think the human person struggles to be well not only in body, but in mind and in soul. You ever thought about this account in the Gospel of Luke, where a woman who is a sinner, as if everyone weren't a sinner, but a woman who has what would be described in Jesus' day a very bad reputation. She comes to this house because she has heard that Jesus has been invited to a meal. She does not come to share in the meal itself. She comes because she is sick at heart and sick in soul. And she knows it. And she knows that she needs to be made well. She needs to heal. And she may have tried many times to do that. I am reminded of the push lately for people who are addicted to medications and to drugs, who are encouraged now not to be put in jail, but to get to rehab and to seek wellness and to seek to overcome that addiction. I think this woman had something of that mindset because I think she realized that she was not going to heal herself. The circumstances of her life simply continued to draw her back into that pit of brokenness. I suspect she may have even tried on several occasions to leave that life, whatever it was, behind. But when the scripture says she was a sinner, it's a pretty strict description of somebody who was outside the pale. Certainly outside of the pale of the Pharisees, who took always great pride in their ability to obey the law and to please God by being obedient to some rule or regulation. Do you realize what it took for this woman to dare to come through the door of that Pharisee's house? Think about that for a moment. Either she was brassy beyond imagination or she was desperate in the very depths of her soul. She would never have gone to a Pharisee's house. She would have been rejected and condemned and perhaps even punished for having even thought of such a thing. But her need to be well in soul was so great that she took the risk. And she came prepared because her very demeanor was to Jesus a confession of her need. She didn't come trying to impress Jesus. She didn't come trying to impress the host, the Pharisee, who invited Jesus to dinner. As a matter of fact, she knew this Pharisee would not be pleased for her to show up at his home. And you see that in the response. For he meant to be a little discreet about it, but he said, well, if Jesus knew what kind of woman this was, he would never have allowed her to come into this house. He too would have sent her away, though the need of her soul was so great. Isn't it amazing how God knows us so intimately that he knows the deepest needs of our lives and seeks to come to us with a healing and renewing and restoring presence. Not just because our bodies want to be well, and they will heal if given the opportunity. You know, I think a little bit about the recent research in the arena of cancer, where doctors are now beginning to work genetically to enhance one's own immune system so that the immune system will actually attack the cancer cells and destroy them. You know, we're trying so hard to help people be well. The need of the soul so often goes unrecognized and unaddressed. Think about what happens in our world. I don't even have to reference Florida this morning. It's happened so many places around the world, and it's continuing to happen even now. What is it where we do not recognize our need to be healed in body, in mind, and in spirit? This account in the Gospel of Luke in the Pharisee's house is a message not just for this woman who came unexpectedly and uninvited, but who was blessed by Jesus with a new start, a new beginning, a new life. Can you imagine how she went away from that moment, realizing maybe for the first time how precious her life was to God and to Jesus Christ? You know, the world sometimes misses the point altogether. We don't gain notoriety by killing one another or by demeaning each other or by tearing down what God has built up. We are called to be builders, co-workers with Christ. So we too care not just about the physical well-being of people in our world. We care about the souls because God knows if you read the scripture, that as people think in their hearts, so they are. You realize in the scripture, when it uses the word heart, it's talking about the very core of who you are. The very essence of your life is your heart. Not this heart, but the heart which is at the center of your very existence. And as people think in their hearts, so are they. Evil comes from the heart. And when there is evil in the world, we know that there is a disease of the soul. It's a spiritual disease, friends. It's not the weapon or the circumstances or the place. It's the heart of folks who are in pain and who are struggling and in need of new life. You don't gain it by taking away the lives of others. You get it by taking the risk to come to Jesus Christ. And if it need be, to put in your tears on his feet. If it need be, to wipe his feet with your hair. And if it need be, to anoint him with oil. Friends, the world needs to know, not only is there brokenness around us every day, but God's greatest desire is that we be healed. And can we be healed if we are so full of ourselves that we stand outside rather than coming through the door and taking the risk? This account in the Gospel of Luke is about Jesus, it's about that Pharisee, but it's about that woman who knew her deepest need and who had the courage in the face of any kind of rejection and opposition to come through that door and meet Jesus. May we all, when we are at a moment in life that it seems we need to take a new step, a new risk, may we find the courage which can only come from knowing the depth of our need. May we find the courage to go through that door and to meet Jesus. Don't let the naysayers of this world have the last word. Jesus spoke to Philip and gave this parable. Who forgives more, the man who owes 500 denarii or 50? The greater the need, the more God's response is life-giving. And gratitude needs to be a part of our journeys. Thanks be to God, whose love will not let us go, even in the most difficult moments of our lives. It's not about my falling off a dirt bike and breaking some ribs and fracturing some of the spinal. It's about how God is a healer and a restorer and a renewer in our journeys in this world. If God can heal me physically, God can heal me emotionally, and God can heal me spiritually, and God will. But go through the door. Don't be put off. Take the risk, and you will find Jesus waiting to respond with grace and love